I always knew I wanted to be an entrepreneur. Like this fits my personality type perfectly, like who I am as a human being. And this was written in stone for me. Like I lived in probably 30 different places, So like being resourceful was like, like you had to do that when you're just bouncing around home to home and staying on people's couches. So you got to make the best of it. I got beat down so much growing up. Like my stress tolerance is like through the roof. There's moments and things that I could show you or tell you guys about that I don't want to dive into where I've lost so much money or so many bad things have happened to me back to back to back, and I just like remain unfazed. That to me is probably my greatest skill set. A lot of people fail because something goes wrong and they get crumbled, they get crushed under pressure. I never grew up with like connections or resources where I could get like high level jobs or, gaps bridged before, for me. So I always had to make the opportunities out of myself, from, lemonade stands in middle school to selling weed in high school to throwing shows and dropping out and, throwing underground rap shows right after I dropped out. And then, I got my first job at a company called Ring. And that's what kind of showed me like, I was there when they raised their first, when they didn't even raise their first round, they were pretty much nothing at the time. By the time I left, he'd sold for $1 billion. And I saw that,
Wow.
and so I just knew, dude, like I tell people I left school because I needed to help pay the bills and get out of my situation. And that's true. But looking back at it, one of the main reasons I left school is because I couldn't stand these teachers telling me what to do. Like I just couldn't stand it. Like I knew I needed to dictate my own future. Like I couldn't let anybody dictate my future for me or tell me I wasn't worthy or tell me I wasn't capable. And so, like, it's always been in me. Like, it's a fire that's been burning. And I was always waiting when I was younger to be old enough to be taken seriously. And, I still deal with some of that stuff today. And in terms of not being taken seriously by certain people. But, like, I always knew I wanted to be an entrepreneur. Like, this fits my personality type perfectly. Like, who I am as a human being and who I am as, just who I am personally. It's like, this was written in stone for me.
I love that. One of the things that I think stands out to me is it sounds like, since you didn't have some of those connections early on, you had to be resourceful. And as we were kind of preparing for this podcast, I was hearing like story after story where you were resourceful, whether it was when you were throwing parties, for in high school and everything was getting shut down and you're having to start it back up, or whenever you first worked out a deal with Supreme Patty and you had to email the guy, what was it, like 30 times or something?
Yeah.
Yeah. So like, how do you feel like that resourcefulness is like played into like your entrepreneurial career? Because I feel like that has to be something that's massive.
Dude, it's one of my biggest pros, and it's just like the inability to if I want something, I'm gonna go take it. Like I'm not gonna unless you give me a hard no, like I'm gonna keep battling against the grain, and like I'm not like this world is mine for the taking. It's not for somebody else to dictate like how I'm gonna succeed or how I'm gonna fail. Like those choices will be mine and ultimately mine. I think one of my greatest strong suits is the ability to deal with stress and rejection. Like that stuff doesn't faze me. Sure, I get anxiety and sure things bother me, but I push through it. Like I'm not here to fail. I'm here to win. And sure, I've had failures, but I'm past that. Like I know exactly what to do and how to do it, and I know exactly how to succeed. And so as long as the universe and I are aligned and I'm still breathing and still kicking, like I'm gonna get there.
Is there a moment where when you look back, you kind of realize that you were resourceful, or was there a moment that you like were like, oh, this is my strong suit? Because obviously you have that self-awareness now, but looking back, did you ever realize there was a moment you could lean into it?
Yeah, I think like resourcefulness is just something like, dude, we grew up like I lived in probably 30 different places, so like being resourceful was like, like you had to do that when you're just bouncing around home to home and staying on people's couches. So you got to make the best of it in some capacity. I think the real turning moment for me was like I got beat down so much growing up that like my stress tolerance is like through the roof. Like there's moments and things that I could show you or tell you guys about that I don't want to dive into where I've lost so much money or so many bad things have happened to me back to back to back, and I just like remain unfazed. Like that to me is probably my greatest skill set. A lot of people fail because something goes wrong and they get crumbled, they get crushed under pressure. Oh my God, this happened to me, I'm done. Resort to what's easy. But for me, like I'm just like my skin is so thick now that like there's very few things that you could do to me or that could happen that will really phase me and throw me off track.
That's awesome.
That's powerful, bro. Building that thick skin that's definitely gotta play a huge role in like the success of even some of like the greatest entrepreneurs in the world. So like you said, you're kind of reflecting those qualities already, which is just so dope.